What's going on? I'm going to be talking about today real estate, primarily single family homes, also multi-family homes. Give me just a second. Let me check out how my audio is. I have a new device. Well, it's not new, but I'm using some different tech. So give me a second. Let me check to see how this audio is, and we're gonna get right into it. All right, so we got the audio is it's pretty clear, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to talk about this, like I said. From this topic is one house can change your life. Basically, I'm primarily talking about single family homes and also, if you can, a multi-family home. So basically, if you don't know the real estate terminology of single family versus multifamily, basically, just as it states, typically a house that's a single family home, only one family can comfortably live in that household. A multifamily, it could be a house or it could be an apartment building, and basically depending on how big, how many floors, and how many separated sections, uh, is how many families can live in that property. So 2 flat, 3 flat, 4 flat, meaning like if you have a four flat building, you have basically four different apartment units that is a potential to have four different families in those units. And a lot of apartments as well as residential houses in Chicago and Illinois, they have basements. Not all properties have basements, because this thumbnail photo is my second house that I got, basically back when I was married. This house particularly did not have a basement. It just had a crawl space. Okay, it just had basically a crawl space. So, with that said, most properties have basements, primarily. Like if you go to Florida, they typically don't have basements, because it's basically Florida is basically, but like it's a swamp. I mean, Florida is a big giant, just swampland. So they don't have a lot of gas stoves, or I think it's like prohibited to have a gas stove, if I'm not correct. Maybe as far as I know, obviously on playback or in current real time, if you know anything different, I would love to know. But as far as my family that lived in Florida, they said that you cannot have gas appliances, as far as like a stove or something like that. And almost basements is very rare that you would catch anyone that has a basement in Florida. Um, so, basically in Illinois as well as like Indiana, pretty much you could just say the Midwest. A lot of people are very much aware of most houses having basements. Even, like my great aunt, she would always say, she told my mother, one of her sayings was, a basement, it was not designed to be lived in. But because I'll just say like, from my generation and previous, I'll say from Gen X to baby boomers, there's a lot of families that had more than, let's just say, two or three children, or let's just say even four children. Basements were primarily used to kind of be like a second or third bedroom. So, a lot of people actually currently live in basements, and also back, years prior, decades prior, people, lived in the basement, so, that was just kind of like a place where if you needed an extra room, you could finish a basement and have, an additional bathroom and or additional bedrooms. One of the reasons why I'm talking about basements as far as multifamily properties is that, although I believe it's like a violation as far as like code, but a lot of buildings, uh, four flat, two flat, three flat buildings, they have an actual basement. And what landlords do is that they, like, for my uncle, he had a three flat building. He would finish the basement so he could actually get an additional unit. So instead of having let's just say a three flat building, you would actually have an additional apartment unit that would be like in a basement that you could rent out for, let's just say, a lower price than what your normal apartments would go for, because it's just in a basement. But they called those in-law apartments. I think that's what the term was, is a in-law apartment. Because basically it's not really a desirable place to be in, in a basement living, right? But a lot of people do that. People, is kind of like one of those things that, like, you know, a lot of people don't say nothing about. Even inspectors, they'll just look the other way. But yeah, typically in the Midwest, I'll say it's a lot of multifamily units have basements, and they also use those basements in many cases to rent out as an additional unit. So the reason why I'm leading into multifamilies is because, you know, in my case, my house was a single family home. So the house that I'm in now is just a single family home. If you can't, I come from a perspective of that you have like a large lump sum of cash, and you can purchase a property, ideally cash, or I would just say within 5 years, you can get some type of like short-term loan and pay the house off within 5 years. Um, if you can't, the whole 30-year mortgage thing, it typically, I would say, it typically comes out to, depending on what area you in, it typically comes out better, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. Even if you got a 30-year mortgage, your savings as far as what you'll pay in rent versus buying, it just comes out better. Now, one thing I will say, since I'm trying to cover all aspects of people's bank accounts and everything like that, because a lot of people, don't have no large lump sum that they can purchase a property outright, whether it be multifamily or single family home. This is what I'll say as just kind of like just some advice if you are going to get if you're going to need a loan, like you're going to need definitely a mortgage, a FHA or VA or whatever. If you're going to go that route, I would just say, if you can, get a multifamily property. The reason why I say get a multifamily property is, if you're going to get a mortgage, okay, let's just say you had no other options and you needed a mortgage, right? Well, if you get a multifamily property, let's just say let's go with the 4 unit building, right? You'll live, let's just say you'll live on the first floor, right? And you have 3 other units that you could rent out. Well, now you just have, the only thing is, and this is kind of goes into what is called house hacking. Now you have 3 other units that they will put, you can do the route, you can do a couple things. You can go the Airbnb route, or you can go the you can get more bang for your buck as far as what you can actually get for your units with Airbnb. Because last I've heard of, as far as Airbnb is actually going head, and they have been doing this for the last few years. They've been going head to head with hotels, almost to the point where some people are like, if I'm gonna spend the money, I just might as well get a hotel, because you know they don't want to necessarily get a room, or have something so personal as an Airbnb, because Airbnbs typically are personal residence. A personal residence versus a hotel room. And then you have some people that actually love Airbnbs, right? And they rent them frequently. So the reason also, like I said again, that I like Airbnbs is you get more money for your units, right? So, you know, you might have an apartment that, let's just say you rent out a unit for $1,300 a month. Typically that pans out to, let's just do some little math here. That pans out to about $43 a day, right, for your unit. Well, with Airbnb, you can do what is called a whole, unit, right? So, like, my first rental with Airbnb, I had my own apartment. I talked about that on my channel, how it was a kind of a tripped out story, but um it was a whole entire apartment unit, that I rented out. Because the thing with me is, I don't really feel comfortable with roommates, or especially somebody that I don't really know. Some people might be okay with that. Okay, kudos to them. But what I would do is, I would have, and then you have some people. It all compares to what you're comfortable with and what you want to set up, because you have some people that actually, that's what they do. They just get, they use their units per room. They don't split it, as far as like they just rent their entire apartment. What I would do is I would rent the entire apartment, because like I Okay. If you go through the Airbnb route and rent an entire apartment, that's, let's just say it's a 2 bedroom apartment with one bath, instead of you getting $43 per night, you can very much get about 80, about double, if not more than that per night. You can get like almost close to $100 a night if your apartment is really nice. You got really nice flooring. You got a really nice apartment unit, right? You could very well rent it out through Airbnb for close to 100, if not more than $100 a night for the entire apartment. Because, like I say, it's a lot of people that they just want their privacy. They just want a place, and they want the entire space. You have people that rent out entire houses, and also entire apartments, and then you also have long-term renters, that they might be in the town for a month, a couple weeks, even a week or whatever. And on Airbnb, everything is pretty much prepaid. And Airbnb has an extensive insurance policy against damages, and that's why I kind of like prefer Airbnb, especially for somebody that, when you're just start, because when you go into the multifamily route, also you're just even if you buy a single family home or a multifamily, you got to look at it from a business perspective. You're getting into a business. You actually have a business, um, especially in the multifamily route, because you're actually going to only use one of those spaces, because this is from a perspective of, you need a place for yourself to stay, but you also have additional units. Well, those additional units, you have to rent it out. You are now in the business world at that point. It's also called commercial. Like I say, the Airbnb route for someone that's new, I would say is better, because you're not taking on that risk. Airbnb is backing you on the condition, because if you talk to any seasoned property owners, right, and that destroyed their place, and how much money they had to spend, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, a lot of seasoned landlords have tons of stories to talk about, as far as their damages that occurred from their renters. When you come in starting off, you might not have the money that they have. A person that's been a landlord for, let's just say, 10 years, they're probably sitting on a bunch of properties and a bunch of money and resources, right? Well, you starting off, you don't have that. If let's just say you just start off, you just take my advice to next week, you go buy a multifamily unit, and you go fixing it up, and then you get some tenants in there, and you go the other route, which is just traditional renting to someone that needs an apartment. And after some time, they destroy your property. Well, that may kind of bankrupt you in a situation where now you have a situation where your apartment is damaged. Good luck trying to get any type of income from the tenant that destroyed your property. Good luck if they owe you any money, as far as like they have unpaid rents that you ended up having to evict them. You might not necessarily be able to survive that, right? Well, Airbnb, you don't necessarily have to worry about those things, because they use their platform, their insurance policy, to kind of give you some leverage. Whereas if you're on your own, you would have to kind of build that leverage to kind of developing a team of, handyman contractors, and cash savings, and funds that you have accumulated over the course of renting out these spaces for years and years and years. Whereas when you just starting off, you ain't got all of that. That comes over time. So that's why I would say I would do the Airbnb, because I definitely would be new to the game as far as like being a landlord and having a commercial unit and where I have to rent out to other people. So that's why Airbnb is on fire right now, and it's been such in the last few years. And I don't see it being one day, so on and so forth. You have people that they like the actual Airbnbs. You got a lot of Generation Z, a lot of Millennials. They like the Airbnb model. Airbnb is a public company, I believe now, and they're doing relatively well. Last time I've checked. So there's an art to Airbnb. I'm not necessarily saying that I know about the art. It's very much a lot of information. People have courses on Airbnb. Sure, it's all kind of books and stuff like that, and as well as channels that primarily focus on Airbnb. I'm just saying from a perspective of multi units, even single family. I would definitely look into Airbnb, because um, even if you have a single family home, let's just say you're going to travel for a couple weeks, or let's just say you might be going, like, I don't know, you got some friends or whatever, y'all about to go like road trip for a weekend. Well, instead of having your single family home just sitting for the weekend, you could depersonalize your house, lock up everything or whatever, and then prep your house for Airbnb for the weekend. Well, when you went out of town for the weekend, you done made about $300 or $400, just renting out your entire house. Whereas or if you gone for a week or two, you done made a couple grand by the time you came back home. So in worst case scenario, somebody damaged your property. Guess what? You got pictures, file a claim with Airbnb. They will take those uh, users that messed up your house. They will basically, they have legal teams, and they got the credit card on file. They handle all of that. All you have to do is just like file a claim. It's the same thing with Turo. If you have like cars that you lease out through Turo, somebody damaged your car, you file a claim with Turo, and you send them over the documents, the photo damage, and they reimburse your damages, and then they go after the actual person that rented out the vehicle. So the same thing happens with your property, with your house. So um, that's not something like that someone will probably do. Even like if there was no Airbnb, a lot of people wouldn't be just trying to rent their apartment out or their house out for a week or a couple days or something like that. Most people wouldn't do that. Well, Airbnb offers a platform. They have an insurance policy to back anything if it goes foul, and it's an outlet for people to make some additional income leasing out their space. So that being said, like I said, if you had to go get a 30-year mortgage, my advice would be to look for a multifamily, because like I say, you can have a situation where you live in one space and your tenants will subsidize your actual um, your mortgage, basically. And that's just if you use long-term rentals, and you could, like I say, use the Airbnb model, and also be the same thing. They will basically pay for that mortgage, and to the point where very, very much possibly you are at a net plus as far as the money that you make off of the additional units will not only pay for the existing mortgage, you will also get some type of net plus income over the amount of the mortgage. Now, I do understand, and I'm not saying that you should go and get a mortgage. You know, I'm just saying for those that kind of have to get some type of property, I would suggest you get a multifamily property. I know it's some people that, and I have to admit, I agree with those people that say it ain't no well, no, because you got people that actually say that, yeah, they would agree with me too, because you're once you get a multi-family unit, that's actually a business. So it's not you just getting some personal property that's not an asset that you're not making money. So yeah, it is, like I say, it's better to get a multi-family if you're going to have to get a mortgage, because this is just for a person that does not have any property, does not really have any type of residence other than them paying rent somewhere, or they living with their parents. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people still live with their parents. I know people that be, it was times that I lived with my grandparents. And people might not want to admit that on the internet, you know, but I can tell. Trust and believe. Older people. A lot of times, what we do is we act like we're dumb. We just kind of watch and listen, and we don't necessarily say nothing, but we've been 30 before, we've been 20 before, we've been teenagers before. We're not dumb. We know what's going on, and we know why you struggling, and doing the things you're doing, trying to run from your problems. Like that, because basically the power went off and then came back on, and then my I guess my Wi-Fi is recycling. But yeah, you got a lot of people that's using their AC and stuff like that. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. But I still have my trusty mobile service to push me through. But I would just say, back to what I was saying, as far as um, the actual mortgage concept. You definitely want to be careful as far as like what you're getting into. You definitely want to do as much research as you possibly can. But nonetheless, I strongly believe that one property, whether it be a single family home or multi-family home, will change your life. Because here's the thing: ideally, I'm speaking from a perspective of, you've already paid off a house, you have a deed in hand. All you have is you got to pay your property taxes. You don't have any mortgage. You're not paying anybody else any rent. And I mean, I'm just saying, like, it literally will change your life. Like, I mean, a lot of people are going through some struggle. You know, they might not want to talk about it. They're struggling to pay a mortgage. They're struggling to pay rent. And if you own a property outright, right, and you don't have to worry about those things, it is life changing. I don't even care. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even care, like, even if it's a situation where the property is not really ideally in the best position, I mean condition. It might not be in the most desirable neighborhood that you really ideally want to live in. um I don't care about that, because what I care more about is the fact that you get out of the rent trap. One house, could change your very difficult in the case now, because got a few things going on, and then also the things that were in play even before property values went up, and then also the U.S. Fed basically raising interest rates, and thus bringing the price of the interest rates for a mortgage up, right? So you still had the property values in certain desirable, um, high populated locations such as New York, Miami, Los Angeles, where the property values are high, and then still are even higher, in even cases record levels, right? Then you had, basically after the pandemic, people moving from different locations and stuff like that, and then trying to find some property. So I do understand that it is more challenging to buy property now versus, you know, 3 years ago. I'm gonna be honest with you. Let's just say, let's just say, I got in a time machine, and you know, I had the same amount of money I had, and back like 3 years ago, and then I was like, trying to buy a property instead of buying my house in 2020, buying a property in 2022, going into 2023, right? It wouldn't have been that easy as it was, because basically it would have been a lot less opportunities, in my opinion. And then also, instead of me paying what I paid for my house, I would have had to probably pay 3 times that amount, if it was even off on the table. Because a lot of I think the person that I was dealing with, that owned the property, that basically I got my house through a land contract, and I paid, within 2 years I paid the house off, right? I think he was like licking his chops to kind of like get me. I mean, he wanted this property back because he saw the value going up. He, basically still had his name on the property, and that's why I just, really hurried up to get the property in my name and get it paid off. But yeah, it would have been. I would have probably had to pay anywhere between 2 to 3 times as much for the same type of property that I currently have, versus had I, bought, you know, kind of like during the pandemic, when It's like kind of still fresh or whatever. So I bought my house in June 2020. So from that perspective, I understand that, you know, it's the housing prices now versus then is a lot higher. Then you have the interest rate issue where, you know, back then 2020 the interest rates were like 3% or even lower, right? Well, now it's like starting at about 5%, and then also again the prices are typically, if not double, if not three times what the original price was 3 years ago. So with those perspective, I understand it is some challenges with my actual concept, but I would just say still versus there's no way, like one thing about real estate is it's not going to go anywhere and you still going to need it no matter what. So the fact that you need it no matter what is the reason why I would say if you can try to buy, try to get some property as fast as you can, and within your price range. Because see, the thing about it is a lot of times this is what typically people do when it comes to real estate. And I understand if you have children, it's challenges with the whole concept of maybe moving into a neighborhood that might not be as desirable as you want for your kids to live in, right? Well, that might be a challenge. I understand that. And you have your, I mean, people have their prerogative of what they want to deal with, you know, but I would just say, from my perspective, how I looked at it is depending on how much money you have at the time and what your budget is, you know, where I would necessarily say move. Because let's say, for example, you just be like, okay, I want to live in the best neighborhood possible and get the best house possible. Well, depending on where you are at in the country, that might cost, you know, a lot of money. And let's just say, even if you got, and a lot of money might be different to other people, you know. Let's just say, for my sake, for that scenario of the best neighborhood I desirably want to live in the best house that I want to live in, right? Well, that would be $500,000 to make that. I would just say, okay, it'll be in the range of $300,000 to $500,000 to make to fill in that actual scenario of, you know, basically, um where I would be like, okay, this is where I really want to live, and this is the typical type of house that I want to live, right? Well, that mortgage, I definitely would have to get a mortgage in that situation, and that mortgage would cost, you know, let's just say 5%. You know, in the community that I'm talking about, is like the taxes are typically very, very high. Well, you're talking about basically a $3,000 mortgage to $4,000 a month mortgage to make that scenario work. And the thing about it is, that house, you got to also remember, if you're going to do the whole 30-year mortgage, that $300,000 house, that $500,000 house now becomes $1.5 million, okay, to close to 700, $800,000 over a 30-year term that you're overpaying for the house because of interest, you know. And the thing is a lot of people don't calculate that or don't think about that. And a lot of people will put themselves in a position where they would go and do that, and then yeah, it is I'm sure it would be very, very nice to come home to just, this ideal location that you really want to live, and then you pull into your, driveway or your garage, and you worked a very long shift or whatever, long day, and you get in your little whirlpool tub, and then you go to sleep, right? But a lot of times that equates to a lot of stress, a lot of burden, because your actual house, your mortgage basically is pretty much 100%, or let's just say 95% dependent on you actually working a job, working the actual job that you have, or whatever means you do to make money. It is dependent on that. And the thing about it is, you know, there's a in between to that scenario, and that in between is if you even get a mortgage, you get in a property, like I said, a multifamily unit property in a very affordable area, might not be the desired neighborhood you want to live in, and it might not even be the desired, property that you want to live in. And most likely, in cases, in no exception to my case, you might need to fix up the property over a period of time. You know, the thing is that how you got to look at it, if you can, is that do you want the stress and burden of paying a mortgage that's very, very expensive, it's very, very difficult for you to pay, or do you want to not be burdened by that, and not have to pay that much, but you might have to deal with living in a neighborhood that you don't necessarily want to live in, and then also fixing up a house that it costs quite a bit to fix up, and the anguish of actually fixing it up out of your own pocket, right? Those things are, the trade-off to that, but I would say it's worth it because, you know, I've been in a situation where I've been in a rent trap, and I've, had eviction papers, put on my door and all of that stuff. And it's like, I've never had a mortgage, but I've been through the whole rent, saga, and living with family and having to go live with somebody else. And it's like having a house, it's kind of like you finally kind of figure something out. You know, finally found some real estate that you can call your own, that pretty much is your pride and joy, and you ain't got to worry about all of that other stuff that you used to have to worry about, as well as rent to pay, and all of the other stuff to pay at the end of the month. And I just can't say it enough. Like, I mean, one property will do that for you. One property that you own outright, um, that will actually just change your entire life. I mean, you can travel whenever you want to. You can do whatever you need to do, and then when you buy another property, basically now you have two properties that you own outright. It's pretty much, it's the building block of kind of being, you know, just on the upper part of society. I mean, most people that are millionaires and billionaires, they own a lot of real estate. They have a lot of real estate in their portfolio. It's just no exception. It was like that before I was born. It'll be like that after I'm gone. And then just the thing is, the one property on a basic level, like I say, will deal with your immediate needs, as far as like everybody needs a place to live, it'll deal with that, and then get you out of the rent trap, the mortgage trap, and all of that stuff that a lot of people have to deal with. Because right now we're in the time at this point where a lot of people are actually getting desperate. They're very, very much desperate. They're under a lot of pressure to pay for a place to live, and they are robbing and stealing and doing whatever they can to make a living to pay for the cost of living. Cost of living is very much on the rise. It's already been on the rise with inflation, you know, gas prices going up, food prices going up. And, the thing about it is, if you already own your property, you don't have to worry about that shit. You done dealt with one of the biggest expense someone has is basically housing expenses. That's one of the biggest expenses most people have. Typically, people pay anywhere between 40% of their income to 65% or higher of their income toward housing costs, toward their rent or mortgage. Typically, if you pay anything over 50% of your income in housing costs, you're what is called house poor. Or if you're renting, you're rent poor, because no more than 50%, really 40% of your income should go towards housing costs. It typically means that you don't make enough, or you got your housing costs are too high, because maybe you have a very fancy apartment in a fancy neighborhood, or a fancy house in a fancy neighborhood that you cannot afford. Typically what I find out from just people that I know personally, it's more of the latter. You getting a house that you can't afford, and you, like I say, are overpaying for it, uh, versus the income that you make. So yeah, it's like a situation where, yeah, you when you actually kind of look at things from, I don't necessarily look at it from a perspective of, damn, okay, I gotta go live in a ghetto now, go buy me a house cash and fix it up and just sit down and save my money. No, I look at it from a perspective of minimalism. One of the things about minimalism is you get rid of the stuff that you really don't need, and you try to maximize your, savings, try to save as much money as you possibly can. It's kind of like that, because if you actually don't have to worry about, a rent or mortgage payment, that's, whatever you had to pay normally, or even just what typically people have to pay, as far as like on average in America for rent or their mortgage, that money is basically being saved every single month. And that's a situation that a lot of people, that's not their reality. You know, at the end of the day, most people don't own any homes. They talk a lot. They got all kind of stuff that they have, but they have it off of credit. They have some type of like payment they have to pay at the end of the month. At the end of the day, what I can say is that, it's an old saying, and it was around before I was born, and I definitely, said it, and I've heard other people say it, and it's not about, what you actually have, it's what you actually can keep. So, like, for example, I can, when I was, very much working full time, and working in corporate America every single day, right? I could have gotten a condo downtown for whatever, $1,500, $2,000 a month, and I could have got, like I said, a Dodge Charger, right? I had enough income coming in to make that possible, right? But that's about having shit to impress others, right? Okay, I go, on a hot date any given night, and then I pick up a chick in a Charger, and then we go back to my condo downtown Chicago. I mean, that is a situation where a lot of people, they can't sustain that lifestyle because it's fake, and it doesn't equate to you making any money, because you got the car, you making the finance company rich, and then that condo, you making whoever owned whatever company or person that owns that condo, you're making them rich. When you actually are making yourself rich, that's when you understand the game. That's when you understand, how to navigate this capitalistic, society and world that we live in. It's about last name decisions, family decisions. Whenever I can kick the bucket right now, this house, it can go to my children. They won't be starting off at zero. They'll have at least something that they could, basically have as far as some real estate. Um, you know, the thing is that if you basically have a bunch of stuff that you have to just look nice and to impress others that you don't own, yeah, you got that, you have a lot. It's great, um, whatever. It could be out of the country. It could be where, like, living a lifestyle that having a good time and stuff like that. At the end of the day, what you have versus what you own and can keep is two different stories. And that's where a lot of times people have a disconnect and have problems. And that's a very, very dangerous game to play. And that whole keeping up, I talk about it time and time again, keeping up with the Joneses and trying to impress others and stuff off of credit. That's where that comes into why people want to have this nice house, this big extravagant house in a neighborhood that they like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe everybody should be entitled to what they want, but that's only in a utopian perfect world. For me to get what I want, I know what that entails. That entails me getting either $300,000 to $500,000 cash, or being able to qualify for that to where, I'm not house poor. To where, okay, if I can afford that type of house, then that means that basically I use the 1.5 rule, and that's basically your income times zero point 0.5. So you get 50% of whatever your income is. So using the 1.5 rule, like, just take my particular situation as far as where I really, really want to live and everything like that, and what the housing prices are. If I just go 1.5 on that, let me do some math here. I would need to make $200,000 a year. I mean, that that's pretty much what I would need to make for that to be a possibility. And see, here's the thing with that. Here's the slippery slope with that, though. This is the problem, even with that. it's a difference between making $200,000 a year from a job versus you making $200,000 from, let's just say, being self-employed to where you can't get fired. That's the other thing. Like, I'm pretty transparent on my channel. I talk about things that a lot of people don't talk about because, internet is full of people capping. You know, I recently got fired from my job. I was making pretty good money, and it wasn't like I was making $100,000 a year, but the thing about it is I was pretty much let go. So even if I'm be honest with you, because of just a lot of things that I've dealt with, and stuff like that in the past, and even not too distant past, the question is, even if I could make $200,000 a year, I get let go from a job, and then what? And this is the conundrum that a lot of people face in America. Like, you get let go from your job, you made you what $300,000 a year, and then basically you get let go. You get, even if you get unemployment, you're struggling to pay your mortgage now. This is the conundrum that also is the problem of trying to pay for a mortgage, based off of your just income alone, to where you're not necessarily house poor in that situation, because if you're making $200,000 a year, you very much well over make well over an amount of money to where you could pay a $3,000 a month mortgage. Because in that scenario, you would be making close to $20,000 a month. But that can all be cut off in one day with a letter from your boss saying that you get let go. So that's where that problem comes into, where it's a difference between, okay, if you making $200,000 from your business or whatever you're doing as far as business, versus you working an actual job. So it's got to be very, very careful, because that's a slippery slope when it comes to being able to pay for a mortgage. That's why I would say I would tread very, very lightly. You almost got to say, you almost got to look at it from a perspective of, this is what I would also say. Even with the 1.5 rule, I would say, can you afford to pay for a 15-year mortgage or a 10-year mortgage for this property? Because they do have 10-year mortgages, and they very much have 15-year mortgages, that are out there, and it's like, man, I just, I'm very, very much concerned with having to pay all of this money into a house, and then you end up getting foreclosed on, because you can't pay for the mortgage, and then you can't sell the property to get out of it, in time to avoid foreclosure. That's very well something that I would be concerned about, and all of that comes into basically wanting to live this actual lifestyle that you can't afford. I mean, ideally, what's the old adage? If you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it. So, meaning, if you ain't got $600,000, in my case, I don't got $600,000 or $1 million, then I can't really afford it. So that's where it comes with the situation where, you know, like I say, if you could actually pay for a house cash, where would you live? If you could save a year to 6 months of cash and buy a house and say, let's just say $30,000 to $50,000, where would you where could you buy a house or whatever? Or some people make a lot of money. If you could make like if you could save $100,000, where could you live? It might be outside of New York. One of the things about we don't really talk about that much, but Pittsburgh is on fire right now. The reason why is you got a lot of people from New York and New Jersey that have moved to Pennsylvania, um, primarily, and are basically buying properties left hand over fist, and they've been doing this for years because New York and New Jersey is very, very much too expensive to afford to buy property. So, you got properties in Pennsylvania that's you could buy like because Pennsylvania is still is I think Pennsylvania is still considered the Midwest. I'm not necessarily sure about that, but you have properties in Pennsylvania that's like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois that you can get for like $30,000, and then you need to fix it up. You probably got to put 20 to 30 thousand or maybe $50,000 into it. But this is the thing how I look at property. You buy the house, and then don't buy no house if you can't fix it up within 2 to 3 years. It's nothing wrong if you got to buy the house and you got to fix it up in like 2 or 3 years. First year you make the house habitable. The second year, you finish it off and make it, look, fully remodeled and everything like that. So, the thing is that you've got a lot of people already are doing that. They've already moved, from New York, New Jersey, other parts of the East Coast to Pennsylvania. A lot of people moved to North Carolina. And then in LA, they moved to Vegas and Washington and also Texas. So in different parts of the country, even Wyoming and stuff like that, because basically they understand if I want to have a better lifestyle for myself and not that much stress, and not having to deal with that much. I'm priced out of this place I grew up or whatever. I gotta move somewhere else. I had to do the same thing. I'm talking to you from Indiana. I'm not from Indiana. I grew up. I was born and raised in Illinois. I was born in Chicago. I mean, basically, I've been living in the Chicagoland area my entire life, mostly. Only time I've been outside of the Chicagoland area is when I was in the Navy, and then just recently I moved, to because not necessarily I didn't necessarily move to Indiana because I had to. I didn't necessarily have to move to Indiana. It was only a few places that I could move to because it was all I could afford. Because I didn't want to get a mortgage. I didn't even qualify for a mortgage, to be honest. Because let's just say if I did have a mortgage, I mean, my conversation will be totally different because I'll be coming to you from a perspective of being stressed out and then having a mortgage bill at the end of the month. That's not my reality, thank God. My perspective is from a person that is actually a homeowner sitting in his house that is paid off. I mean, the thing is that had I been able to get a mortgage, I definitely would have gotten a house that was pretty much move-in ready, grade B condition above, right? But I probably wouldn't even be talking to you because I'll be getting ready to go to work tomorrow, because I'd have a mortgage to pay, so, um, it's just, I've said quite a bit. I definitely would say, I thought about talking about other stuff and other crap, but at the end of the day, it comes back to the money. This is definitely a money channel, a financial, channel, finance channel, and I mean, it all goes back to the money. You know, just think about it. What do you got to go to work for tomorrow? why do you have to go to work? You got to go to work because for most people they have to pay their bills, and either you're behind on your bills, you're ahead of your bills, or you just get by, and you need that money, you know, for your retirement, for your current bills, and everything like that. And it's like, at the end of the day, what if you had, let's just say, the whole monopoly thing? What if you had, let's just say, four houses and two apartment buildings? Well, that's pretty much almost like a retirement if you think about it, because of course you probably gonna be living in one of those houses, but you got three other houses and two apartment buildings, right? That you rent out or whatever you do. And pretty much in that scenario, you still can work a job. A lot of people still work and are property owners and landlords. But that perspective is a lot different, you know, um, versus you actually having, a mortgage on all these properties. I'm talking about you own them outright. It's just a different perspective when you actually have, either, just starting with just one property that you own outright, versus, you have a whole bunch of properties. You probably, I would even say a lot of people in this scenario, they they have mortgages on those four single family homes and two apartment buildings. I would have to say that somebody that actually owns all of those properties outright, they don't have no job. Their job is being a full-time landlord. I follow guys that are landlords as well as they fix and flip. They don't have no job. Their job is real estate. And I have to say, you know, that's definitely something that I'm gonna be looking toward to be in my reality in a not too distant future. It's already part of my reality, but I'm just trying to add to it. So this is all I have to say. I hope you heed this message, and try to, if you got to move out of state, even out of the region, hey, the Midwest is here. I mean, the South is still got a lot of properties in the South that's cheap. It ain't nothing wrong, man. You can always get on a plane, on a train, or whatever, to go back home if you homesick. And that's it, man. I mean, just if you got to get out, it ain't nothing wrong if you got to get out of your own home state because you priced out and buy some property. If that's what you got to do, whatever, by any means, I would have to say, get a property, you have it, it'll change your life.